So in this video I'm going to talk about something that is more a hack than anything, but it might be very useful, so that's why I'm going to talk about it. If you played around a bit with Innovation Suite, you know you can create a process and you can have different data types coming inside an input parameter of your process. So for example, let's say that I have a process, I have a service, and I have an input parameter, and which is type record matching type test service. But it can be something else. I can have, like, for example, a text, an attachment, date time, blah blah blah, and I have an object. And what is it? So if you're looking at the documentation, you shouldn't find a lot of information, if at all. It's just an object. So the idea is that it can be anything. It's actually expecting a JSON object. But the problem is, if you are creating a variable which is type object inside your view designer, let's use send message. If you're in your expression, you have test, because it doesn't know the structure. It doesn't know what it looks like. Let's say we have a DVD, so we have a title, we have a release date, we have a price. It doesn't know it because it's just an object. So basically you can only do that. But if you want just a title, how do you do it? So this example is going to show you how you can play around with those processes. So here you can see that I want to pass to a process an array of strings. So a list of movies. And what I want is, I want to pass an array, I want to get a single string with the title concatenated. So when I click on it, is giving me a concatenation of the titles. But what I'm sending to the process is actually an array of data. It's a JSON array. So how can we do that? So here, if you look at the example, so you can see I have a launch process which is calling this one. Use object as input, array of strings. So this one. So it's I try to describe what's happening. So in the input, you can see that the movie list is actually an object. So the trick is, you're sending it a string, but the string is like a JSON that has been stringified. So it's a string version of a JSON. So when the process is going to see this movie list, it's going to take the string and make it a JSON. So it's going to go from a string to an array object. Then this is my output parameter. So I want to send back a string that concatenates the value. And here I got a movie string that is a local variable type text. So what can you do? So here I have a compute value because I want to do some concatenation. So what I want to do is, here you have some pseudocode. I want to traverse my movie list to extract each movie, and I want to concatenate movie list as string equal movie list as string and the new title, and I want to send it back. So this is what the compute value is doing. I'm taking the movie list as string, I'm adding the title, the new title, and then I'm saying that movie list as string is the output of the compute value. So basically, movie list as string equal movie list as string plus that. This is exactly what it's doing. Movie list as string equals output, which is movie list as string plus the movie string. How do I get the movie string? So process designer is smart enough to know that the movie the movie list, which is the loop data input, because I want to loop, so I want to loop sequential. and the source is movie list. So for him, when it's going to go from the string and going to make an object out of it, is going to get an array of strings. So process designer is smart enough to know that here the movie list is actually an object, and this object is an array of strings, is an array. So it's going to take each element, is going to loop on each element of this array, and it's going to store each element one after the other inside movie string. So movie string is a local variable type text. So why we did do that? Because we know that the input is going to be an array of strings. So it's going to loop through all the movies inside the movie list, which is an array of string. The current movie is stored inside movie string. So it's looping inside movie list. For each one of them, storing it movie string. And then it's going to do movie list string equals movie list string plus movie string. So in this case, which is the most simple one, this is how you access the data. So if you have an array of strings, you just have an input parameter of type object, and you iterate on this list of objects. And then because the content is a string, you say that the content of this specific iteration will be a string that you pass. So this is like the easiest option. Then the next example is a bit more elaborated, but maybe also more real something. So instead of sending a list of objects, a list of strings, I want to pass an object. So here I have a movie object. So I have a movie, which is an object with a title, with a genre, and a release date. And I want to concatenate all this information into one string. So I'm going to pass to the process this object. So once again, it's a string. When it goes to the process, it's going to be changed from string to an object, to a JSON object. So how is that working? So this time, for this example, I'm calling the process use object as input object with something. Objects with attributes. So once again, I try to explain what's going on. So I have title matrix, genre science fiction, release date. So in the input parameter, I have my movie object, and at the output, I have an output which is text. Because this one is much easier, I just send a movie. So when it's coming inside the process, I got my movie object. So here it will be sent to this string to an object which has attributes title, genre, and release date. So here I have a compute value, and I'm going to do movie string equals error, error, and error. So why do we have error? Because in order to get the attributes of an object, you have actually to type it manually. So how is that working? So as you can see here, my movie object, I don't have title, I don't have genre, I don't have release date. The only way to make it work is to do something like that. So you have to use $curly bracket process.context dot the name of your variable, movie object, dot the attribute you want to access. So in my case, I have title, genre, release date. So here, what I did is I want to get $process context dot movie object dot title attribute dot genre attribute dot release date attribute. So when you think about it, it's pretty easy. It's something you can use, in Java or JavaScript, but we don't handle that out of the box in Process Designer, so that's why it's showing as error, but it will work. It's working, you can see it working. So the next case is a bit like a combination above. You want to send this time an array of movie objects. So here we are sending an array with 2 movies. And same thing, we want to concatenate everything inside one single string. So Matrix science fiction 1999, Terminator science fiction 1984. So this one is a bit different because we are sending an array, and inside this array we have two objects. In the first example it was an array, but we had strings. So how can we do that? So in this example, which is here, so we still do a launch process and array of objects. Array of objects. So once again, I try to describe everything that happened. So we have as input an array of objects, but which is still an object for us. We have an object in as input. This is the output, so my string for the concatenation. And this time, instead of having like movie string, like in the first example, I have a movie object, which is the object. And see here, it's very similar to the first example. I have a compute value. So this compute value is going to loop through the movie list. So like the first example, but this time, instead of mapping inside the movie string, here when I'm going to map, I'm going to get a movie object. So this time, and it's logical, so I'm going to map on movie list. I'm going to store each element one by one inside the movie object, because it's an object that is sent back. This time it's title, matrix, genre, science fiction, release date 1999. So it's not a string anymore. So I'm going to store one by one from movie. I'm going to traverse movie list and store at each loop inside movie object. And then I'm going to say movie list as string equals this. And this is movie list as string plus process context movie object. So movie object is my variable here, which contains my current movie. So process context movie object dot title plus movie object dot genre plus movie object dot release date. So here I'm using two objects. One of them is the input with an array of objects, and the other one is an object in itself. And after that, like in the example number 2, like this one, you access it through process context dot the name of the variable dot the attribute of this object. So how do I know that I have a title, I have a genre, I have a release date? I don't have anything here. Well, you have to know because you know what is the data you send. So for example, if I do something like title 2, see, it's not working anymore. I have some information missing here. See, I'm missing matrix because it tried to find dot title, it couldn't find it. So in this case, you are dependent on the quality of the data, but you know what data you are sending back. So here is how you can send objects, or you can use objects inside your process. So here, of course, the data is sent manually by, this way. But let's say that you have a process that is accepting data from a custom view component. So let's say, for example, you're getting a list of CIs from discovery, and you want to pass it to a process, and you don't know the structure of it. Or you know the structure of it, but it's not a record. It's not a record definition. So you have no way to tell your process, here is the structure of the data of the object. You would have to do it this way. So for example, you have a REST API that gets the list of the CI or call connector or something like that. It's getting the data. You send the data to the process as an object. And then inside the process, in order to access every object properties, you would have to do $process context.variable name dot the attributes. So this way you're not limited to whatever we give you, for example, in the dictionary. You can just use whatever object you have. You just have to type, in this case, exactly what attributes you want. So yes, the side effect is you're not helped. Here in the data dictionary, movie object, you don't see the detail of it. He will not tell you that you have a title, Java release date. And yes, it will appear as error, but the process will work so you're not stopped, or you don't have to create a custom service to parse the JSON and save it somewhere or send it back as an object, because when you send it back to an object, for example, generate password, so when it comes back, generate password, it sends back in the output and it sends back password and username. So instead of doing a custom service that is going to take your JSON and parse it as an object, and then you can use the output, and then you have some thing to help you like password and username, you would have, like, for example, I could have sent my object to a custom service. This custom service would have instantiate like one Java class, one DVD Java class, and send it back as an object, a Java object with title, release date, and price. So this way I could have used it this way inside my process, but you have to code a custom service, so it doesn't really work well. It's a lot of code, and you might waste your time. So you can just use $process context, your variable name, and the attribute. It's supported, so yes, you have some side effect, but at least it might allow you to actually leverage the object power in this case. So you can just send whatever data you want, access this data in your process. So there is one case, of course, that would have been very interesting, is if you have a grid, if I can find it. So I could have say, well, let's say I'm selecting like one or several rows, I'm clicking on a button, and I'm sending those rows to a process. And this way, using object, I can do something with data. So let's say you want to close a list of tasks. You would just have to select like the task you want to close, click on the button that will launch a launch process with the selected rows, and you would just iterate and close those tasks. So that's actually a question asked on the community. The problem is it doesn't work because it seems we have a defect on the launch process when we have this kind of object, when we have a collection. So it doesn't work. So I think it's going to be fixed. I don't know when, but right now this case doesn't work. So I expect it to work because it would be very useful in this case. It would be one very good use case where you can a lot of people ask for a modifier selection, a modifier functionality, where you could just select all records, click on a button, and you would just launch a process. The process will do your doing and come back. So right now it doesn't work. So I might do a catch-up video when the problem is fixed and with an example.